Hello, Soul Spiralers. Welcome back to today's conversation. Today, I have Joseph Callender joining me. And Joseph runs a clinic, a shamanic school, and he connects people with their heart, mind, and soul, teaching them a number of tools, but especially connecting them to their psychic gifts and guiding them to their fullest self. He has a number of experiences and modalities to navigate this, and his wealth of experience and years of accumulated wisdom very interesting, and I'm sure we're going to dive into plenty of that today. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Joe.
Thank you for having me. It's kind of weird hearing somebody else describe your past, isn't it? Yeah. Especially your name. It's kind of weird when you hear your name on an official podcast.
You're getting Joe or Joseph more at this point in time?
Do you know what? I don't care. It depends upon how you've said it. You can call me Joseph.
Joseph, you like the Joseph. Yes, I love it. Well, let's kick it off with a question. How do you nourish and expand your soul?
I love that question. How do I nourish and expand myself? Those of you that come to my house would see there's fairy lights everywhere. And I'm in our temple space, and we use this for workshops and stuff. And I've put these strips of lights that have got colors everywhere. So winter is a thing for me because I don't like winter, even though I'm English. And so when it's dark, today's quite sunny, but when it's dark, nourishment for me is seeing color. And so I literally turn on, I've got some in the toilets, I've got some on the other side in the lounge. I turn on color. Outside of the color, I've got a personal trainer, I've got an alignment specialist, I've got a masseuse, lots of body work. So there's 3 different types of body work I do. I'm seeing about 3 different types of therapists because as a practitioner myself, it's kind of useful to get the detox and the guidance when you're holding space for others. And so I'm seeing an EMDR therapist, I'm seeing Cairo, who's also a kinesiologist, I'm seeing another kinesiologist. And I worked out, especially for a lot of my clients, in the last 3 years, let's say 3 years ago, the amount of self-work that you had to do was, say, if you worked 5 days a week, you would have to do at least 1 day a week for maybe a couple of days in between your work sessions, and then spend 1 day at the weekend doing self stuff. I worked out, because of what's happened to most people over the last 3 years, the neediness in clinic, the neediness in class, and that's not a judgment, that's just an observation, has stepped up so much that I'm recommending to people, for some people, they literally do 1 day of work, 1 day of nourishment, 1 day of work, 1 day of nourishment. For some people, I'm saying you need to up what you used to do 3 years ago by 6 to 9 times.
Wow. I think I needed to hear that today.
Absolutely. So, and it's really hard. If you've got a successful business, if you've got lots of students and clients, and you've got people that are really, and your heart is open, you kind of want to help them. But, I call it the oxygen mask on the plane principle.
Totally.
And I say, put your oxygen mask on you before you start to help others. And we've all gone through a very interesting time over the in the last few years, and most of us are losing loved ones, and so we just need to put the kind of work in. So the therapy, non-negotiable. I'm doing EMDR. I think I mentioned that. And
it's been popping up a lot in my field recently. People mention EMDR. It's so amazing though, hey?
Totally, yeah. It's very similar to some of the modalities that I do, but sometimes you just need to shift something, and sometimes you need to learn the lesson. EMDR is really good. It's, for those that don't know what EMDR is, it's eye movement desensitizing reprocessing, and it's literally the guy is doing this, moving his hand, if you're doing it remotely, across the screen. And that, if you have done NLP, you would know that there's you can tell a lot about a person by how they move their eyes, and how they process and how their brain stores things. So with EMDR, you can essentially, it feels like it's rubbing it out. And so where it used to be, because he's literally doing this. And so
moving his hand side to side for those.
Yeah. I keep forgetting this is only audio. And so what tends to happen is I literally feel my brain reorganizing how I hold the trauma.
Yeah, wow. It's amazing. The eyes are such a window to how we hold experiences. It's crazy.
Totally. And so one of the things I teach some of our students when they do the Spirit Weaver work, which is the shamanic cleansing work, is what happens when we die. And every time we focus on an area of our life, so like you focus on doing these podcasts, you focus on being a partner, you focus on being a kinesiologist, we literally create different versions of ourselves. And so the more we put energy, the bigger that version of ourselves. So there's a version of you that's a kinesiologist, there's a version of you that is a partner, and the more you focus on that thing, the bigger the energy and the bigger that version of you. What I'm noticing is when you do the EMDR work, for those things that are smaller and don't need that much integration, the EMDR seems to break that part of you away so that it's no longer in your field. And so you're not losing a bit of your soul as such, you're just losing a packaging or a set of programs that you don't need to think about anymore. And for those things that don't require you to show up differently and learn new lessons, it's really good for that. It just gets rid of that.
So interesting. How do you feel that differs to, because I know you've done a lot of work in hypno and like the NLP space. How do you feel that differs in the way that, do you feel like that's more dealing with, rather than just erasing it, you're really like going into the crux of it and working through that to clear it? Is that kind of the difference?
Yeah, kind of. It's sometimes, well, as a kinesiologist, you would know that each client presents with the same issue, but one of them needs energetic support, one of them needs chemical support, one of them needs structural support, one of them needs emotional support. Somebody might need a supplement, so they need some nutrition. And then ultimately, what I've noticed for a lot of people is sometimes they just need some guidance. And sometimes that guidance is better to actually come from them.
Totally.
Or their older, wider self. So you'll choose something like hypnotherapy if you need to get underneath the reasons why this thing has come up. You need to see the story that presented itself, and you just need facilitation or assistance in learning a new skill to process that yourself.
Yes.
And so, for example, if I'm dealing with an incident that happened when I was 5, at 5, I don't have language skills. I probably don't have a nervous system that can process all of that. So if my parents are doing a good job, they're hugging me all the time, and I can use their nervous system to process, and I can learn how to process it from that proximity, from that touch, and just from observing how they do it and how they guide. Now, if you haven't had that, then you don't have that aspect, that learning. But by the time you're 40, 50, even if you're now 23, by the time you're 40 and 50, you can the likelihood is you've done the work to heal that. And so in hypnotherapy, we can not only take you back to that 5-year-old, we can take the 23-year-old version of you as it presents now to guide your 5-year-old. And if the 23-year-old you now doesn't have the experience, we could bring the older, wiser version of you. And then it's always you helping you so that you become empowered. Now, even though I love the MDR process, it's great for just a bit like what happens when we do the vibration in Qi Gong. It's literally just shaking energy that is ready to go, that you don't need to learn a lesson from. But in the hypno process, if you actually need to understand, if you need to learn a new skill, then we facilitate you to get that out of your adult self so that you're helping you, which empowers you.
I love that. That's a really clear articulation of the both. And I love the the reminder of vibration in Qigong, and how that I mean, we love the vibration in Qigong. It's such a good tool to just shake off things, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I don't do, because I do it online these days. We don't yell as much, but I used to like the tantrums and the stomping.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of the screaming and the yelling in that point in class, and then smoothing it over.
Yeah, and the purpose of that was really just to balance the sympathetic with the parasympathetic nervous system. Just sometimes we get into a habit of being stressed all the time. And so given a little shake, I do that with clients, even if I'm doing, say, family constellation work. And I love family constellation work in groups where you get to choose different people to represent different family members. But I also like doing it with floor mats. And with floor mats, I get to play the role of the different parent or the ancestor. And quite often you land into a situation where you can feel the trigger, you can feel the energy that the ancestor's holding, which is actually the energy that you're holding. And so I get them to vibrate, just shake that off.
So good.
And you can just feel it passing through the system.
Yeah, family constellation work's so interesting like that. Like you can really feel the depth and energy when you're experiencing the different components of it. I really noticed that in my experiences with it. For anyone, maybe you can explain what family constellations are though, because I feel like it is quite a niche thing that only if you really know about it, do you know about it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, happy to do that. Would you mind me going a little bit further back?
Totally.
And just describing how when clients show up, this is what I tell them.
Tell me.
I say,
go ahead.
Everybody needs a shamanic cleanse because we have metaphysical beings that are using us as food and sport. Yeah. And so if you're traumatized, and who isn't, probably, I know you understand this, but if we haven't been treating humans very well for the last 6,000 years. So many of our ancestors have had not a good life. Yeah. And so everything that they experience gets recorded in their DNA. Yeah. And if you go back just 10, 20 generations, you're looking at several tens of thousands of people. Yeah. So in 20 generations, it may be even in the hundreds and thousands, you are the product of all of those experiences. And let's say the average person has a child, it used to be the 20s and now it's probably the 30s. So let's average that to 25. And let's say there are 100,000. That's 2,500,000 years of experience in your being.
Wow.
So we all have, we all incarnate into a biological lineage which predisposes us to pick up everything that lineage has.
Yeah, it's the good and the bad.
Absolutely, the good and the bad. And the quid pro quo for getting this incarnation is we take on that stuff.
Yeah. So
we start with a loaded bag. And that's what the metaphysical beings will be using. So if you're addicted to smoking, you'll get a ghost that wants to smoke and experience that through you.
Totally.
If you are angry all the time, if you are frustrated, if you're anxious all the time, then you'll get a particular type of entity that will use and manipulate you so that you're always experiencing that because they can feed off that. Mm-hmm. And so I say everybody needs a cleanse. So they do a cleanse. And then because of what we were just talking about, in our blood, our epigenes, which go on top of our genes, our epigenetics, we have a whole lot of this ancestral trauma. So all the patterns that we get stuck in, all the things we can't shift, all the tendencies we notice. So, I've got clients that can't show up as the best version of themselves in particular relationships, or can't become successful in particular situations. And that's because we have this thing called unconscious loyalty to our ancestors. Everything that our family does. Can you imagine incarnating into the mafia? So you've got 5 brothers and sisters, and all of them are part of the mafia, and you decide to be the priest or the good guy or the nun, Mother Teresa. Even though you're doing something which is wholesome, because the family business isn't, you will feel unconsciously loyal to that and feel like you're betraying the family. And so there'll be guilt and betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you leave your country of origin, so this is every Australian, in their ancestry, who is white, certainly, anytime you leave your family of origin or your place of origin, you will feel this guilt, and the recipients would feel this betrayal. And so what we inherit from our family lineages is everything that impacts a family. So if one of our ancestors was killed, we get the murderer energy as well as the victim energy. If our ancestors were in war, we get the emasculation of the men, as well as the, which is the victim energy, as well as the aggressor energy. So if it's colonization, we get the colonizer.
Yeah.
And
wow.
so all of these patterns we have an unconscious loyalty to. And so all of our family is always connected, and we call that the family soul or the family field. And so religion gets imprinted, we get cultural things get imprinted, and we're programmed and hardwired essentially to follow that path. And so family constellation sorts out all of the systemic stuff that you inherit from your family, whether that's health conditions, whether that's emotional predispositions, whether that's a feeling of stuckness, whether that's a heavy burden. So all of these things, what we do in family constellations, in part of my other modalities, we have this concept of forgiveness, but not in family constellations, because it's disempowering to forgive. In that context, what you want to do is give responsibility back to the ancestors that allowed these situations to perpetuate. And so the family soul looks to the live descendants to clear the energy. And so you've got the metaphysical beings that are eating you or eating your energy or eating the fear that they keep perpetuating, or eating the anger. And you've got this predisposition for all of those because ancestor was angry, mum and dad were angry, ancestor was anxious, mum and dad are anxious. So we facilitate them to go back to the strong ancestor and say, hey, you take that energy, you allowed that. And if they're able to take responsibility for that, they suddenly become empowered. And that empowerment just trickles down all the way through the lineage. And so even the family members that weren't there get to benefit from that.
So cool. It's like, I mean, I'm reading a lot about the red thread in terms of like lineage at the moment, with obviously being pregnant and, you know, all of those things. It's like a very similar concept, but it's even like on a bigger scale, because it's not just like the feminine lineage. It's a more energetic through our ancestry.
Absolutely. And so, and then I go on to say anything left over, because once we've done the metaphysical cleanse with the shamanic work, and then we've done the ancestral healing to basically get rid of any systemic stuff that we have from our family. And it's really easy to know if you think you've got a particular issue. Let's say I'm dealing with rage. Where does that make sense? Mum or dad? My dad was always angry. And my cousins are always angry. If I'm dealing with anxiety, which was the anxious person? And if it was mum, then anything else is your stuff. So we use the hypnotherapy for that. And the level of hypnotherapy that we do is not just doing, you know, a traditional clinical hypnotherapist would reframe early childhood experiences, but we recognize that this is held in energy. And with energy, in order to change the experience of the past for somebody, you actually have to remove the energy that holds that experience. And so we can do that with hypnosis from the ancestors as well, from your past lives, and from your childhood, from your womb estate. So what happens to a lot of kids is that they voluntarily take on the issues of their parents just to help the parents. Especially in utero.
Especially for that rapport building, because that's what creates like feeling of safety or feeling of acceptance. It's constantly trying to establish rapport. I hear a lot about when kids are little, how they develop the same breathing patterns as their parents, because it creates rapport, makes them feel accepted in the tribe and not rejected. So it sounds like the exact kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, it's the energetic version of that.
Yeah.
So what you've just described is kind of the natural mechanism that kids do to be cherished and loved and to learn. But we do a similar thing energetically. In order to be accepted by a family, we become one of them. And we do that with our friendships as well. In order to be accepted with our friends, we start to mimic each other.
Totally. You're attracted. All my friends look like me, kind of thing.
They do. I did notice that.
Hey, not all of my friends look like me, but I do have a type.
Yes. Yes.
I take responsibility for that.
Kristin's. That's kind of flattery, isn't it?
Yeah, but my sister doesn't look anything like me, so otherwise they probably look like her. So it's like a good balance.
It's funny, your sister goes in and out of looking like you and not looking like you, I've noticed.
I know, she's a bit of a shapeshifter sometimes, that one.
Yeah, I've seen her for ages. Do you know, one of the most beautiful experiences I had with your family was when you all turned up to do the Qi Gong.
I know.
And you've got your sister and your mum, and to me that was just so heartwarming. And that really, just that so, alone.
And Alex too.
Mum, and Alex, yeah, and Alex's mum.
Yeah, we really got everyone on board with the Qi Gong. It was great.
That was awesome.
We didn't quite get Dad there before it was too late. Or Alex's dad came, I was saying to you, but obviously he was not in a space to be able to experience the Qi Gong. But
the fact that you got him to show up, and I was convinced that Ian was going to eventually come to one of our workshops.
I don't know. I think he was just starting to talk about being open to acupuncture like in the last 6 months. So that was like, there was a whole level of acceptance. It's so interesting to witness. Like obviously in the time we didn't realize that he was in his last like few months of living.
Yeah.
But if you look back at his level of acceptance of things during the last few months of his life, he really was like coming to a new point of acceptance and an openness to things. Yeah. And so we were like, oh, things are starting to shift. But actually it was him coming to that end of life acceptance, not that any of us knew it at the time, to make peace with things before he passed on, you know?
That in itself is also beautiful to watch.
Yeah, it is.
To see that transition. Unfortunately, my father passed in the UK during all the lockdowns, and so we weren't able to be there at all. But having said that, he did have the experience of watching him be a great grandfather versus, and also a grandfather versus my memory of what it was like to be his son was vastly different. And it was, it's, I think the grandkids is where the parents get it right.
Yeah. Well, I was so excited for my dad to be a granddad because he loved kids. He wanted kids before my mum wanted kids. So I just always thought he'd be a physical granddad. But yeah, it wasn't part of the journey. But I witnessed him with my like best friend's kids when we were younger because she had kids quite young. So I've witnessed him with the kids, and I'm really grateful that she did that for me so that I have those memories of him playing with them.
Yeah. And it's, you know, in the world that I play in, you know, he's going to be there.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, we just moved into a property with so much garden. I don't know how he couldn't be.
Yeah.
Because he loved his garden, you know.
One of the ceremonies that I recently launched was an ancestral healing ceremony. And it's looking at it's based on the principle that when a loved one dies, it's not guaranteed that they will transition to become an ancestor. Yeah. So we just assume that that's going to be the case. But what I've learned with doing all the psychopomp work, which is crossing over dead spirits, is that sometimes they just lose their reasoning faculty. And sometimes they die in a state. The work of the practitioner is to make the connection between that human energy and the helping spirits, because the helping spirits can't, their vibration is too big, so they need us to make that bridge for them so that that person can be helped. And the healing ceremony is kind of using cacao because I wasn't going to do that before, but it became screaming. It was, you need to do this as a ceremony.
It comes a bit like that with the plants, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And so I'm using cacao and matcha. Very interesting. Never did that.
That's a very interesting combo.
Matcha is coming into my field saying we've got work to do.
Cool.
And what we're doing is facilitating the participants of the ceremony to start to heal some of the dead relatives. I make a distinction between dead relatives and ancestors.
Yeah.
And then we do a ceremony to promote them to become ancestors.
Aww.
And it's really beautiful work. And when I was putting this together, and just looking at different reference points for ancestry, learned so much about how things like, did you know one of your past lives can also be you as one of your ancestor?
Yeah, I have thought about that. Yeah.
And it's a beautiful experience. And also in our belief system with the work that we do, your next incarnation can actually be in the past.
Yes, because time is not linear.
Time is not linear. We're giving ourselves the co-collective is this experience of the linearity of time so that we can learn, that we can have experience. But, through the journey work and through the hypnosis, you can go to your point of birth. You can go to the pre-birth. You can go to, and one of our teachers relates this experience of having to remote view a location in the past, and the person that they're remote viewing is having a dialogue with them as if it's in the present.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's
and so you're next.
That makes me think of something. But you continue, and I'll tell.
Oh no, it was just it's just that with that all of that experience with the ancestral stuff, you kind of know that all of the participants, when they go back to start healing their ancestors are saying things like, "I'm so glad that you're doing this. Yeah, I'm so proud of what you're doing. You got this from me." And it's obvious because one of the questions I get them to ask is, what's my inheritance from you? And he said, when you do this, that comes from our line.
Wow.
And so we're doing the 4 different lines. So it's the mother's father's lineage and mother's lineage, and father's same mother and father. And so to come back to the point, your dad is watching. Your dad is so proud.
Oh yeah.
And he's also participating in that. And so part of what we do is to make people who would be lonely if they've never come across us just connect to things that can nourish them, including their ancestors, because they can continue the dialogue. And I was lucky enough to do this work, but when my father passed, I actually did his last rites a few days after he'd passed. I went back in time, washed the body, did all the things that you have to do, and then I walked him to the other place.
Wow.
And I was in tears throughout the whole experience. And I know every so often I dream of him, and I know he's like talking to me. And I knew in that period of time when he transitioned up to about 6 months, you can have a dialogue with them like we're speaking now. Because that channel is open.
Totally. Yeah, it's interesting. Like the first week after he died, like I was finding it really hard to, I don't remember, I'm trying to think, because my grandma died quite recently as well, and I'm trying to not confuse the two. But I couldn't see his like spirit clearly, like, but even when, because like I was the person that found out, I was the first person in the family to find out that he'd passed. And when I was told the information by the policeman, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, Dad's not, he's on the other side now. Like that was like my immediate thought. And then obviously all my humanness came in, and all the different, like, have to do this, have to do that, which then created all the stress and anxiety. But yeah, I don't know, it was just like, we were in this weird, that was like, it was so magical, but weird at the same time, because Mum was up here with me. And then we were just like, we had Maxine on the phone, and we were just like drumming and lighting candles and singing and like doing prayers pretty much most like for a few hours over that night. And
that's beautiful.
And then obviously we went down, and then once we viewed his body, and we went through that experience, then I started to feel him differently. Like, there was like I could feel the transition. And then I kept asking to dream about him before I'd fall asleep, and it just wasn't happening. And then a couple months ago, he started coming in my dreams, not in like clear ways, like just me experiencing dreaming with him in there. But I realized that because obviously I had this real attachment or expectation to him being a grandfather in a physical form. Yeah. I realized he had to do so much. He's got so much more that he can help me with from where he is now than what he would have been able to do in his human form. Like, I just realized that through the process, and I was like, okay, well, that makes sense then, you know?
Yeah. What a great connection and contract you had with him. Yeah. He'll show up as the best version of himself as a grandfather.
I know, isn't that nice?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Have you created an altar for him?
So I haven't at the new place, but I had an altar at I have an ancestral altar that I have dismantled from my old house. Which I had a frame for him, but I didn't have a picture of him yet, but I had all his stuff there. Yeah. The picture hadn't arrived, but I found the picture the other day. So yeah, I've just got to reset it up again because I have a full ancestral altar. And I usually recommend that to my clients as well, because a lot of them don't maybe connect with their lineage as much. And you know, things like this happen, and having that like reminder in a really beautiful way that like we're honoring our ancestry and our immediate ancestry is just really special to have. I think it's really important.
What you'll notice, and what I'm starting to see, we kind of noticed this ages ago when we put our Shamanic Magician program together. What was missing was the ancestral work. Yeah. And it wasn't missing by accident. It was missing because we knew that we needed to go through that process to reconnect to our ancestors before we could have authority to do this with others. Totally.
You got to be embodied.
Absolutely. And I realized going through this process that we are only a shell of ourselves until we actually feel like we belong to our family. And one of the principles in family constellations is the flow of love. So one of the things I look at is the order of the family and the flow of love. And, you know, if you go to Bali, some of the names of certain tribes, they codify the order of the family by the name. So I can never remember what they are. So you will either be called Katuk, Mane, or Made rather, and I think Made is number 2. And so they preserve the order of the family, which preserves the flow of love from the family. And the flow of love comes from the first to the next, and also from the ancestors down. And when we judge our parents, we energetically make ourselves bigger than them. And if we make ourselves bigger than them, service can only come from the strong to the less strong. And so by judgment, we make ourselves energetically bigger than our parents. So we then cut ourselves off from the magic, medicine, beauty from our ancestors. And so in answer to your earlier question, what I really do is I help people soften so that they open their heart and start to connect and build bridges to their family, to their spirit, to their friends, to themselves. And that softening allows us to open up to the fact that everything has a consciousness that can be part of our family. The camera that we're looking at, the microphone that we're looking at, the table that we have, the computer that we have in front of us. I mean, that literally is a crystal. The silicon in there is crystal. Totally. And the house that we live in. And so there was I think Eloise, remember, you've had Eloise on here, haven't you?
Yeah.
Eloise crystallized it in a video testimonial we did from the Bali training. And that was, and I think she was just quoting us, but it was, I've forgotten. I did that build up and I've completely forgotten the quote. What was that? What was I talking about?
Witnessing family in all forms of the expression of our life, maybe not just in the expression of our mother and father.
Yes, thank you. Well done.
I'm just channeling.
Channeling and listening. Ultimately, although it looks like we are doing training for spirit work, and work that takes you out of normal everyday experience. We have come through full circle with all of this, and we've realized that we're actually training people to be human.
I mean, that's why we're here, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the helping spirits and all of the sort of metaphysical experiences that they have are just safe contexts that you can basically muck up. And the helping spirits are really forgiving. And so ultimately, when you learn how to run ceremony, you learn what it takes to care for people and to look after people. When you deal with helping spirits, people tend to put them on a pedestal, and we try to normalize that, but treat them reverently. If you treat a helping spirit reverently, how dare you not do that for yourself?
Yeah.
How dare you not do that first for your parents? How dare you not do that for mum and dad, you know, and your siblings? And so these are otherworldly experiences that give us an opportunity to just use human kindness, human respect, human responsibility, just show up as the best version of yourself, so that, because none of this is taught anymore. And so if you do this for a couple of years, you then start to go back to realize, I need to heal my relationship with myself. I need to heal my relationship with my mum. I need to heal my relationship with my father. Because how can I hold space for others if I can't even hold space in my own family?
Yeah, so true.
And that's what put us back to the ancestral work, because we realized, shit, we need to heal that rift. And on the spirit ally training that we have, when we talk about connecting to ancestors, there's an African proverb that basically says, he who ignores his ancestors won't have a relationship with his descendants.
So true. And like,
I'm
why else would
paraphrasing.
we have chosen to incarnate in families and have these, like, you know, experiences, whether it's karmically or whether it's, you know, there's other things going on, but like, as a human race, we've chosen to come into human form through to other humans that then create this lineage of family. Like, there has to be such a strong, like, part of our reality that relies on learning through that mechanism, you know?
Absolutely. And the real learning is when you broaden what family means.
Totally.
I'm from the UK, and if you go back 10,000 years, 80% of the United Kingdom inhabitants are related to each other.
Yeah. Wow.
In fact, it's not 10,000, it's 1,000 years. You go back 1,000 years. I heard this statistic the other day. 1,000 years and 80% of the inhabitants are connected. If you think about what makes you different to me, now I'm this big, huge black man with a very hairy black man, and you're this,
You're not that hairy, Joe.
little petite white woman.
Yes,
What
I'm very
makes
pale.
us very pale with rosy cheeks? What makes us different is 1/100 of 1%.
Yeah. Wow.
So essentially, we are all the same family.
Yeah.
Which is what makes the family constellation groups awesome. And you notice that everybody can tune into everybody else's family because we are the same family. And our genes, it just takes a minor change in our genes to express the tan, the dark skin. And so when you broaden your definition of family, first, your family of origin, i.e. mum and dad and siblings, are your training ground to learn to show up as human.
Yeah.
Once you learn the skill set, courage, respect, kindness, grace, reverence, you know, all those fortitude. Once you learn that, and it's one of the principles of family constellation, the order of the family starts in the family. So you learn, that's the template for how to be human. And we're disconnected from that. And so we're using the helping spirits as a new family to remind you all of this sort of stuff. But once you get the lesson, you realize that you're my family. Totally. And so I can't show up for you well if I'm not showing up for my loved ones well.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's taken me 50 years to realize all of this.
But I guess that also, like, it makes me think of, how, for example, obviously I've come into your life and you've come into my life at different points in my life. And, you know, people might call it soul families and these different experiences that we have with people that it's like we must have known each other previously in different ways but is it really just family there? Because at the end of the day, like, we're just gathering in our tribe all together. So maybe we're also related, you know, those years back.
Yes, it's soul family and actual family.
Yeah.
And the reason why we're not getting on is because, you know, there are times when you and Maxine probably haven't seen eye to eye.
Yeah, from ages 5 to 17. No.
Absolutely, and you were fighting each other, and we do that with our extended family. Yeah. But for some people to actually understand that the neighbor that they're pissed off with is probably a distant cousin, and it suddenly just takes away the angst you have, and our culture does a lot to the whole idea of nationalism. Does a lot to create these compartments. This nation is better than that nation, and immediately you've created division.
Yeah,
and you get a lot more love thrown back at you when you open up your definition of family and start to realize that the table in front of you also has, you know, you can go all the way back to we are actually stars. That Big Bang created an explosion, which then densified, and then it created these solar systems. And there are some traditions that actually believe that this is the projection in this universe of a being that's actually a star. So some cultures actually believe that we're stars, but if you think about all of that, everything in this creation has the same origins. So you can broaden your definition of family and to connect with everything else. And so if you're alone, that's just that's a state of poverty of imagination, poverty of learning, poverty of expression. If you're alone, it's because you've forgotten who you are.
So true.
And you know, I still deal with loneliness. I just come out of I just say just, it feels like just, it's like almost 2 years now, of a 18-year relationship, and navigating all of that at the same time you're grieving your father is kind of interesting. But
it all happens at once, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But that is those sorts of, I think this entire conversation is the answer to what do you do to nourish yourself?
I love it. It's just the one question, really.
It's just the one question. Okay, so question number 2. I nourish myself by changing my understanding of the nature of reality.
Yes.
And helping myself feel connected to everything so that everything can nourish me.
Totally. And I feel like something that I've found deep nourishment in, and a lot of people do, is the Qigong aspect of the works that you do as well.
Yes.
Because
You've been dying
that was my
that
introduction to you and Sharon, and it's such a powerful tool to really get to this point of harnessing your energy and this kind of reconnecting any separation within yourself and that I think it's so, whenever I have clients that their points won't balance because they're just like too out of whack and the energy, like I can feel the resistance, I'm like, you need to go do some Qigong, because it'll just create the flow in the system that everything works more together internally again, you know?
Yeah. It's you've been dying to get the Qigong in.
I love the Qigong.
I kind of love the Qigong, and I just did a year. I in March I opened up an online container for a year called the Year of Power, because this year has qualities in the Chinese calendar that other years don't have, and we won't get this energy for another 60 years.
Are we in the Year of the Tiger?
Water tiger.
Water tiger. Yeah, because my child's going to be a water tiger.
Yeah, it's water tiger. So water tiger comes around every 60 years.
Yeah,
it's the Y, the circle. And water, what's that? Yin.
Yeah.
And Jing. And so in water tiger, you get a any energy work that you do to nourish yourself basically lasts longer and expands. It's almost exponential. And so the year of power is to help people build that Jing. So my journey with the Qigong has been quite interesting. Prior to meeting Sharon, actually, I met her in a energy training school. I was in a philosophy school for 20 something years and learning.
So cool.
learning all sorts of things, but ultimately learning how to apply ancient wisdom to the zeitgeist, to everyday situations, and studying meditation, studying scriptures and all that sort of stuff. It was awesome. And at towards the end of that, I realized, in fact, I found by accident, because I worked a few doors down, this thing that was called a strange Korean name. I think they called it brain something or other. I can't remember what they called it.
Like a training thing or something.
Yeah, it was a brain training or something like that, or brain meditation. And there was something about it. And when I went there, it was a Korean Qigong school, and that's where I met Sharon. And she was one of the trainees at the time, before her and Andrew were running it. And what I realized that they were doing, they had a philosophy system themselves. And I remember I was in a session with Sharon, and she was supposed to be my mentor. And she was telling me some of their philosophy, and I was going, this is rubbish. I said, this is crap.
Joe.
This is crap. I said, you don't believe this. And I gave her the hardest time. It was really funny. It's because I actually liked her.
Yeah.
And so I was teasing her. And what I realized, having done that for 4 years, by that time, was that it was the missing link in my life. It was teaching me about energy. The philosophy was doing how you come into this creation. It was a different system on what worship and devotion was, and what God actually is, and how to apply spiritual principles to your everyday existence. And what I was missing was, where does the spirit stop, and where does energy take over, and how do you apply energy? Mm-hmm. And at that time, their managers used to be judged on how full their centers were. And if their centers weren't full, this was a Korean system, they were told that was because of them, and it was their energy. And so suddenly I realized that this system understood energy. This system understood
self-responsibility.
But your energy state puts you in a situation so that you can command creation at the level of your energy. So if you've got no energy, your ability to your influence in the world is lesser than if you've done the work to build your energy potential. Mm-hmm. Now, that can sound really fluffy. And a lot of other people that claim and what was really interesting in that school was I saw Reiki practitioners that felt energy for the first time. And you think, well, you're a Reiki practitioner. And they didn't get it. And they were using their energy, and they weren't really learning how to channel. And because of who we are, we kind of understood this immediately. We understood that this was a principle to teach people how to feel their energy body, to know where they start and where others start, and then to learn how to push and control energy. And that was the missing link for manifestation.
Yeah.
So, and this was at the same time that, videos like The Secret were becoming mainstream, and people were looking at the law of manifestation. And the law of manifestation is great, but if you've got no energy potential behind you, you've got no battery. To manifest. And as we have switched to a time where this is much more responsive as an energy universe, 20 years ago, you could do mechanical, physical stuff to achieve your goals. Now, you just need to fund that activity with the appropriate energy and make sure that you are sovereign and that you have that energy potential.
Totally.
And so success is part of that. And so having understood that, We came over here. I was in the energy training school for about 10 years. And then about that point, we came over here. Actually, no, that would have been 5 or 6 years. And we came over here. And prior to that, allegedly, we were doing other types of ceremonies, which I won't name publicly.
Okay.
And we came over here and noticed that ceremony scene, which was mostly around plants, no one could hold their space. Mm-hmm. And they were all over the place, and they were all at the behest of the plants. So everybody thought they were a shaman. Everybody thought they were a goddess, and no one had any lower dantian, lower potential. And so we realized that, that's what's missing in Victoria. We needed to teach people how to hold their space and how to hold energy. And the most attractive thing about our shamanic energy training website is the shamanic stuff, but it really should be the energy stuff, because you can't do the shamanic stuff unless you actually have the potential to hold space for a container.
You need the foundations.
And so we realized that we had something different to offer the people that were doing the ceremony work and the shamanic work, because none of them understood energy. And so I actually said to Sharon, because she was getting disillusioned in her advertising job, you should open up a school here. And it said that I'll look after the everyday stuff, because I was working in a corporate job and I got transferred over here, so we could live. Yeah. And I was earning quite well, and so we did the work to start the Qigong school. And the very first class we had in our lounge. And we had 7 people. And then we ran a couple of, at that time it was just Elemental Warrior. And we were just doing that Korean-based Qigong. By that time, Sharon actually had gone to a Chinese school to become a teacher trainer for the Chinese system of Qigong. And two observations we had: everyone gets bored easily and no one can commit.
Yeah. The Western mind.
Yeah, the Western mindset. And so we at the beginning we tried to have 10-week classes, and people would drop off by week 7. So we'd have 7-week classes and people would drop off by week 6. And so we then put it down to 5 weeks, and then we had to make it varied. Where Sharon learned Qigong in this energy training center, and when I studied other systems, they make you do a limited amount of moves for the entire year.
Yeah.
So you're doing opening the flow, and that's the class for the whole year.
Oh my gosh. This is just your arms moving up.
My arms moving up and down. Now,
which feels beautiful, actually, I must add.
It feels beautiful
until you've done it for.
Yeah. Well, if your mind and body are in alignment, it will feel beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, what I learned from the philosophy school, we used to do activities where we had to go chop wood, and we used to then introduce philosophical principles. Let the focus be on the job at the point where, let's say you're chopping wood, where the axe, I literally had to do this is why I remember it, where the axe had to meet the wood. You know, if you're cutting bread, cut bread. Don't think about your appointment next week. So just be present. And so it was training to actually put us in the physical, in the present moment. And so there's a version of that with everybody. If you want to learn how to meditate, if you want to learn how to Qigong, if you want to do the journey work, what you do when you're not doing those things is just as important as when you're doing those things. So if you're having trouble meditating, then notice where your mind goes when you do simple things like taking the bins out, cutting bread, and doing all of that. And so in the philosophy school, we were actually doing activities to show us the quality of our meditation when you actually paid attention to what you were doing. And a similar thing happens with our body. If you look at a gym, gyms have screens and televisions and music, and a lot of the people that go to the gym to escape as well as to go to get
their
fit.
AirPods. Yeah,
absolutely. And there's a virtuous circle that happens when you actually pay attention to your breathing and you pay attention to your body.
Yeah.
And we direct the natural universal chi back into us, so that the amount of energy that we have at our disposal can increase. And so we were teaching people this sort of thing, but in a fun way, so it doesn't feel like a lesson.
Yeah.
And so you get to scream, you get to move, you get to, and because we understood energy and we had that shamanic background, we realized that when everybody's releasing energy, there's the potential for all of the ancestral entities and all of the metaphysical stuff
to be like, hi.
to come and jump. I once went to a plant ceremony where luckily the shaman was really good, but you could see literally the entities going from one participant to the other. And you can watch the shamanic practitioner following it.
It's like an STD.
It's like an STD, absolutely. And so what we made the difference in our energy classes was that we needed a container, because we know what it feels like to be possessed. We know what it feels like to when somebody suddenly switches because they're possessed by an entity. So we hold our energy training in a shamanic container, so that which sets a boundary, so that what goes on inside contains inside. And you know, you notice that when we did this in person, there used to be two of us, Sharon and I.
Yeah.
And you need to build up power in order to hold a class of 30 by yourself.
Totally.
Because you're not only looking at the health and the energy of your participants, but you're also looking at the state of the class, and you're going to that entity in the corner. No. Go. Yeah, go. And so that's why our class was so nice. And we used to have, in each series, you had about 70 people in 2 locations, and it was great. And I miss those days.
It was so fun. Those days were so fun. I remember.
What I'm going to do next year is
come to Queensland and do it.
Possibly. I'm going to do something a bit better than that. Teacher training.
Cool.
Teacher training.
You've been speaking about that for a little while.
It's coming. It's next year. I've made the prerequisite that you've got to do the year of power, because we have standards. I'm not going to turn out students that can't hold energy, and
of course.
They have to learn. And when we do the teacher training, we're going to do things. Do you remember Sleeping Tiger? Mm-hmm. We're going to do 40 minutes Sleeping Tiger.
That is tough. I remember when I was traveling like through Europe and India, I was doing Sleeping Tiger like almost every day. And Alex and I were taking pictures of us doing Sleeping Tiger in like random places. Do you remember us posting some of those? I do. That was the. Do you know a little secret? The energy training was our lost leader to fill our clinic. Yeah. but it then took over our lives. Yeah. Then it was like, there's no space for clinic because energy training is here. Well, yeah, we thought that we were just going to be, because Sharon and I have done similar amounts of courses. She's a kinesiologist. She's done probably double the courses I've done, because I was funding it all. Well, no, to be fair, she earned quite a lot as well in her advertising director job. But somebody has to hold space for the household while the other one goes off and develops themselves. And then it was my turn. There came a point where, right, well, I'm going to do all of this as well. And so we have so many other modalities, and we thought, right, that's what we're going to be. We're going to be clinicians, hypnotherapists. I had loads of other modalities, but it was only when I did the hypnotherapy that I actually felt confident enough to open up a clinic, because it was kind of a permission slip for me, and it was a recognized qualification. Solid foundation. Yeah, absolutely. And for Sharon, that was her kinesiology. Yeah, I feel that way with my kinesiology. Like, I don't feel like I need to do another like foundational thing. I can just build on whatever else I want to do, but I'm still just a kinesiologist in a sense. Absolutely. Yeah. And some of our earlier students, they've had to do that in order to feel that they can show up in the market as a practitioner. Sometimes the ego needs a solid foundation. What our goal is that now we are the foundation. So the Shamanic Magician program, I suppose I'm allowed to say this, is accredited now. Woohoo! We have just got accreditation so that you can get insurance, and we'll be the body. Wow. And that's been a journey and a half, just to learn how to show up as a teacher and to have students. I just had a student's client come up to me and said, I found your name because I've just seen this person and I've been seeing a whole load of people. Can you help me with this? And I'm going, okay.
to supervise a whole raft of people who are showing up in the world to do spirit work is just an amazing experience.
Job. Yeah,
but it is a big job.
I can imagine. Yeah.
So question number 2.
I think we're almost getting into some of the fun questions, but I just want to ask, you mentioned the elemental warrior as your Qigong training, and then you also had chakra warrior, and those were like your two kind of, I don't know, I want to say like base level Qigong energy training programs.
Yeah.
But then one of my favorite was doing White Dragon. That was like probably one of my favorite things. And I don't know, there's something so special about, working on that energy and then learning like a proper form.
Yeah.
And can you explain the difference between like just doing like these energy training with just certain movements and holding postures versus doing a form, and like what it actually does to you energetically?
Yeah, sure. So the foundation is actually the starting point was Elemental Warrior, and so I then transitioned Elemental Warrior to something different. So what Elemental Warrior did was blend the shamanic work with the physical energy work. And so I then invented the Meridian Awakening.
Yes, the Meridian. I love that one too.
So what I did this year with the Year of Power, we started with the Meridian. So that's, as a kinesiologist, you get this. So it's unblocking the pipes. Yeah.
That's what my clients need.
Yeah. And so we do the Meridian work, and that is a 6-week program that focuses on 2 meridians each week.
Yeah.
And it's basically movements to clear the blockages from those meridians, but also the primary organs that those meridians are attached to. So and that does 2 things. That gets people to understand, because the way we do it, as you may remember, there's just lots of content to pictures of what the organs look like, pictures of where the meridians are, and descriptions of how energy works. So we got a lot of conversations of saying, your Qigong is a bit expensive. And I said, well, because it's more than Qigong. It's
the amount of things that you have in your content, I think, is much more than most people are expecting to digest in a program.
And so you become an energy master just from attending our workshops, ideally, if you're actually reading the blogs and things. And so it's a community focused around energy. So with the meridians, you've cleared the pipes, and then we work on the chakras, which are the other energy centers. So chakra warrior then comes next. And then we've just finished White Dragon. So we've moved from that to White Dragon. Now, White Dragon is an energizing form and a structural alignment form. And the reason I did this was actually quite funny. It was because it looked cool.
It looks so cool.
When you see people do that, they're doing these movements, and
they all have a purpose. And when Alex and Maxine and Mum and I were all in the same form classes, then we just like, it'd be 9 o'clock at night and we'd all be like, should we just do some form together? And all 4 of us would be like in the lounge room, like doing the form, or we'd just go down the beach. Let's just do the form together. And it was just so fun to like do. Yeah, it just feels really good.
That's brilliant. So I wish you'd have posted that. Those are the sorts of things.
It was too spontaneous to be posted.
True. It's not contrived. I think you need a camera that's just there to capture everything.
Just a security cam.
Just to post.
Big brother.
Just for my Instagram. So the form is it's almost like a codification of specific moves. And so what it actually is particular holding postures. Now, what the holding postures do is they're like antenna that tunes into the earth frequencies. And so what we've put together is when you do Chakra Warrior, Meridian Awakening, and Elemental Warrior, the class is split to 3. Right now I've changed the format because we're doing the Year of Power. And so they're all focused on building power this year. But the beginning stage was loosening up the joints, unblocking the meridians. Then there was the holding postures, which forces the chi to the extremities. And they're also antennas that allow you. So the body loves angles. So when you're bending your wrist back and your elbows bent and you've got a particular position, what that does is tune you into the frequency of Earth's natural vibration.
Yeah.
And that in itself is quite healing. What that does is sweeten the saliva. And when you swallow that saliva, it acts as a healing elixir. So it's literally giving you proximity to Earth's natural frequency to heal your body. And that's what the holding postures.
Beautiful.
And then we go from the holding postures to vibration. Now, I've started for the Year of Power, we're starting the first 3 series, or 2 series, I think, with vibration. And that way, and what vibration, the focus of the vibration is just to release any stuck or stagnant energy. Because when you shake the body, it's a bit like the analogy I often give is if you had a dusty mat, that you would either pat it, and that's what we used. Remember, we used to do the body tapping. Yeah. Hardly do that now because
that got reminded to me the other week. I had an iridology session, which I did a podcast with Kaylee afterwards, but she was saying you need to do body tapping again because your lymphatic system needs it.
And that's exactly what the body tapping was. It followed a sequence that allowed the lymph to flow. But the other, the idea was that if you're tapping the body, you're like that dusty mat, you're loosening out the stuck, stagnant energy. And then when you vibrate, you're then anything else that just needs to discharge. It's not just a shaking, it's a conscious shaking. So you're consciously drawing up Earth's energy and imagining, feeling, sensing, knowing that your organs will release their stuck, stagnant emotions and energy into that Earth energy, and that you're consciously dispelling it with your mouth with the intention that's recycling, rather than spewing all that crap on all your family members and all your friends. You're consciously getting Earth to recycle that. And at the same time, because of the vibration, you know what happens when a deer gets chased by a lion?
I've seen that video recently, actually.
Yeah, and then it survives. It then shakes.
Yeah, it's funny. The other thing that's been in my field a lot recently is the TRE, the trauma release, whatever it is, which is the vibration, the shaking, tremor release something.
I can never remember what the E is. No,
I can never remember what the E is. But I did it a bit after my dad died, actually, with some of my mentors. Yeah.
If you want a skill to do for nourishment, start every day with 5 minutes vibration. Put on any song and just bounce up and down, and then turn it into a dance.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm writing that down.
Best way to start there. Your baby will love
morning.
it.
Yeah.
She says, "Mum's." And so continuing the answer to your question. So the holding postures also build fortitude.
Yeah.
Because we hold them for 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, as the classes are now 60 minutes. They used to be 90 minutes and you could do a lot more. So now they're 60 because a lot of the busy people are complaining, I just can't find 60 minutes. And I'm going, do you not love yourself enough to find 60 minutes?
Yeah, make the time.
Make the time. But, you know, I've had clients say to me, I've been meaning to come to see you for the last 3 years. And it's only now that I love myself enough to actually spend money on myself. So I kind of get it.
Yeah,
totally. I kind of get it. That just melted. Yeah, that melted me when that client said that. I just went, oh wow.
I understand.
I understand. Come here, Daddy will help you. And so in that the holding postures for 10 minutes, you're going to vibrate because the energy that's stuck is going to move to the extremities. And that in itself is going to continue that vibration process. And it's also because you're creating an antenna with your body, it's also then tuning into that earth frequencies. And so you will heat up. and it will be a detoxing effect. And then we go on to, as I said, the vibration to just shake out the excess. And then we go into energy accumulation postures and breathing postures to then fund you. Because once you've opened the pipes, you've then vibrated and got rid of the stuck, stagnant energy, and you're now much more resonant with Earth's frequencies. We can start to work on you. So then we teach the energy accumulation practices. And so all of the series have energy accumulation postures, and Sleeping Tiger is one of them. And that stops people needing to be energy vampires, because you now have a way of energizing yourself and adding to your own store of vitality, if you will.
Yeah.
And that it also boosts the mood. And so it's also a holding posture, because we're building grit. Because the other thing that's missing in people being able to create the life that they want, especially your generation and below, is that you're not used to the hardships that we used to have to do. A challenge. Yeah. And so the holding postures build fortitude so that you actually have that grit to be able to push through obstacles.
Yeah. And hard work.
Absolutely. And they are hard work. And then we go to relaxation, where you just let go.
Yeah.
Now that in itself is a process, and I've started to call it a modality. I didn't realize that this is actually a healing modality.
Totally.
The way we do the Qi Gong is a healing modality. And
it's like a vinyasa.
It's like a vinyasa. It does have structure. Yeah. We understand energy, so there is some thought about how the classes are constructed.
There's the build, and then the fall, and the integrate. Yeah.
And or we start on the high and then we go down, so that because what builds the Jing, which is the Chinese name for the energy going into the lower energy center, what builds that vitality is actually when you slow down.
Yes.
And so even though the move dynamic postures and the beginning twisties do feel energizing, what's actually happening is you're starting to feel the energy, because it's no longer stagnant. Yeah. So you're starting to feel the movement. But it's when you start to relax is when you start to build and collect the energy. Yeah. And so what the dragon forms do, they slow down the antennas, and they slow down the nervous system, and they slow you down so that you can live in your body, move in a particular way. And the white dragon form is a structural realignment form. So the moves are constructed to basically restructure your spine so that the flow of energy through your body and through your spine can realign itself.
No wonder it was my favorite.
That is energizing.
Yeah, wow.
And so those people that do the shamanic stuff as well as the Qigong can then benefit from the appreciation of the spiritual connection that makes as well. Totally. Because you'll start to spontaneously journey if you're doing this properly.
Yeah, and you see the white dragon pop.
And you can see the white dragon, yeah. It's funny, Sharon's brother used to say, you guys are con artists, you're talking about dragons.
I've seen the white dragon.
And then I think several years later he started to draw dragons.
He's like, oh, now I get it.
I get it now. And it's beautiful when people come and say, I've seen the white dragon. And that's what we call the totem guardian of the lineage, so beautiful, of that lineage. And then the red dragon form is, which we're going to start next week. So anyone if this comes out in time, you can introduce your team to that. So I can't remember what day. It's live class on Monday. It gets recorded and you can just do it. So the difference now doing it online is that, when you came to an in-person class, you would have to try and remember everything. Now it's online. That video is there for the entire, so you get to keep and do. So now, since March, there are 40-something videos up online.
Wow.
And so any one time, because I break some of the videos down to, I'm now structuring it so that the beginning of class can be a class by itself.
True.
And then the end can be a class, and then you can do the full class. So there are 15-minute classes, 30-minute classes, 20, 40, 60,
whatever's appropriate.
Whatever's appropriate for the amount of time you've got available. So red dragon is another form of holding posture and calming the nervous system that also is doing moves to energize you. And so it's an energizing form. There are 3 more dragon forms, and they're coming out next year.
Ooh.
Baby dragon form, golden dragon form, and rainbow dragon form. They're coming out next year. So I'm going to extend the year of power for those. So you have all of those videos, and that stage, and I'm still conscious of the question I'm answering for you about having Qigong in Queensland.
Yes.
Is we're going to do the teacher training so that those people that have done Sacred Space Week up to Sacred Space Weaver, and therefore they know how to hold space, preferably they've done the Coven so that they actually have Sharon's brainwashing and they know how to honor spirit and do all of that stuff. And, you know, it's a bonus if you've done the Spirit Weaver work, so you know how to clear entities. I'm going to be putting them through an energy transformation process so that they have the strong enough energy. There's no point just teaching people how to teach Qigong. Yeah. It's teaching people how to fill classes. Yeah.
Hold their energy.
And hold their energy and become much more sovereign. So that's what the energy training. So that way, and I know I've had inquiries from people that are up your way.
Oh, well, we'll have to wait. You'll have to stay tuned, won't we?
The idea is, the reason I'm doing this is I don't want to do this. I want to attend somebody else's Qigong class. I'm
going to say you wanted to move to Queensland, Joe.
Well, yeah. If
you like the warmer weather, I know you do.
I do love the warmer weather. Want to be a bit more, because now Sharon and I have decoupled. You've noticed that she's put a lot of her energy into her alternate business. So we both share shamanic energy training. Yeah. And she's got the Temple of Shamanic Magic. Yeah. Well, I'm going to launch. No one's ready for yet. So it's what happens after you've done
spirit. That.
It's actually called what I'm going to launch. No one's ready. I can't believe it's not butter. It's for those people that want to take the practitioner work to the next level, but also want to focus on their own advancement. So it's actually called Shamanic Ascension Training. Yeah, yeah. So you know how people like Eloise and Dean are doing the psychic development work? Mm-hmm. That you go to them if you want to learn how to be clairaudient, clairsentient, claircognizant, and if you want time in a container to expand them. We can do that work, but we have no interest. You're much better going to somebody like Eloise, who
she's so good at it.
Yeah, she's a little galactivated wizard, witch, genie.
Everyone have to go back and listen to her podcast. From a few months ago.
And then once you've developed that and know that, and you've had that experience of that, then you can come to us, and then you do shamanic training, and it's respectful of all the other teachers that we've had without ripping off their stuff, but giving our version of that from the spirit teams and what they want us to cover in our lineage, so that you can become a shamanic practitioner or a spirit weaver, as we call it now. Totally. Shamanic magician even. And what you don't get from us is your own personal journey development, the guidance, the mentoring, and all of that. So I'm doing 2 things. I'm going to take people from Spirit Weaver to, there's 3 other levels of Spirit Weaver. So it's learning how to open multidimensional medicine wheels. It's doing all that sort of stuff. And we've got to wait for the students to come up to that level before we can do the class. Yeah. But it's also because of my background in all of the things that I've done, and the experience that we've had I'm now 53. I've lived lives that most people that come to us are starting. It's that guiding and the practices. So the Qigong will eventually move into that shamanic ascension training. And it will be, there'll be a Qigong workshop that will also look at emotions. So it'll be Qigong for emotions. Yeah. And so it's doing all of the work. I'm going to launch my first workshop soon, which is called, I actually have it in my clinic now, one-on-one, but it's called Decision Spaces. So it's combining all of the spirit work so that you can make it relevant to your life now and use those skills in your day-to-day.
Super important, yeah.
So that it doesn't become a spiritual bypass, because a lot of people are going straight from problem to spirit world, and they've forgotten their lives, and they've forgotten their lineage.
We come back to the separation and the reconnection with ourself and the reconnection with our family. It all comes back into that, doesn't it?
Spot on. Yeah. And so that's where I'm going to take the work is basically create a container so that you can advance spiritually, put the shamanic practices and the energy practices into practice, and essentially just show up as a better version of yourself. And that's kind of what the clinic has done. So my Embodied Soul Clinic it's been a, you know, we said this offline that I was told by somebody, if you want to know what your practice should be, it should be all of the lessons that you've learned growing up as an individual, because you're now qualified to take people through that journey.
Totally. Good remembering. I told you to remember that.
You did. I listen sometimes.
No, I think that's a really beautiful articulation and a very thorough covering of a lot of things. And there's so much more that you offer as well. But I want to ask you some fun questions, Joe.
Sure.
Do you know, if you know, what is your sun, moon, and rising signs? And if not, I can look it up for you.
I can look it up because I've got them here, but I don't know what they are. Let me have to do a search. Well, but I am Pisces.
Pisces, yeah.
I am Pisces, and I know I've got hold on. So sun is Pisces, moon is Taurus, Mercury Aquarius, Venus Aries, Mars is Scorpio. It makes me a bastard.
Where's your ascendant?
Which one is ascended? Scorpio. No.
Oh, no, that makes more sense. It's the truth seeker in you and the truth bringer that you like to point out the truth.
That does make more sense. That's totally me. I learnt growing up, if what you have to say doesn't improve the silence, then don't say it.
That's a very Scorpio thing to learn.
Absolutely. And if it doesn't improve,
I feel like Scorpio sometimes it can improve the silence, but maybe people aren't ready to hear what the truth is. Is probably the thing that I witness the most in some of my Scorpio friends. And probably in you. I know that you trigger people, don't you?
Yes, apparently I do. We call it activation in my therapy.
An activation. Catalytic energy.
So in the soul plan work, it's the 9 energy, which is the power. So it creates an activation. And the idea is that what the energy potential does is it brings up that struggle in somebody else. So if you hold the energy of power, then that's going to produce power struggles. It's going to show people where they're disempowered, or where they're giving their power away. And so, my history has been, and a lot of people that have got the catalyst is the people who aren't ready to see certain things or hear certain things. And that was a learning for me, to not destabilize somebody because you tell the truth. And how dare you,
they'll find it when they're ready, in a way.
How dare you? And Sharon told me a really interesting thing. I remember under ayahuasca, we were in Peru under ayahuasca, and she said, you could tell them the same thing to their spirit and it has the same effects.
There you go. Rather you're not blamed for it.
Rather than being blamed for it. And so part of my journey has been to balance, because I was brought up in a corporate setting, and I was a salesperson for a long time, where in the corporate world emotions aren't there. And then I went to a philosophy school where I mistakenly for 20 years looked at emotions as being weakness and the ego being a bad thing. And then now with the energy work and with the therapy work, becoming a therapist, I realized that essentially is the definition of narcissistic behavior, where you're invalidating somebody's experience of their reality.
Yeah, the whole gaslight term has become
That whole
very
gaslight
common.
term is that, yeah. And so when you take those spiritual insights out of context, you can do so much harm with that. And I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
And what I learned was that I had to relearn that as a man, you don't solve things by compartmentalizing them and putting them on the shelf up there. and that you have to allow people to express their truth, and then learn to meet them in their version of their world, as opposed to try and change them for your version of your world.
Totally.
And that was for some strange reason, that was a difficult lesson for me, because I think it was easier to bypass that and go straight to the so-called spiritual. Well, ego is crap, isn't it? and if you're upset, it's because you're being egotistical and emotions are not valid and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And to relearn how to hold emotion, and to relearn how to hold your own emotion, that your own emotions are valid. And
totally. Everyone's emotions are valid in their own experience, and it's about the self-responsibility of not putting those emotions on another person.
And leaking emotions. So
totally.
in the shamanic school, we teach you how to contain energy. But when we do family constellation work, we teach you how to feel.
Yeah.
Because you can't, you know, in the same way that we digest food, our system does the same thing with all energy. Food just happens to be one representation of energy, but the same thing happens to our emotions. And because we're trained to demonize our emotions and to not, you know, especially if you're a man, you're not supposed to feel them, you're supposed to repress them, you're supposed to do something about that. You then don't train your body to do what it can do. So a lot of the time in family constellation work, when you step into one of your ancestors or your parents' energy, and then you feel the emotion, the only way it's going to go through your system is if you honor it and give it the time of day and your attention.
Which is really how we need to be navigating it in day-to-day life anyway.
Absolutely. So if I'm angry, I can own that by saying, I am angry. Feel into the anger, breathe into the anger. I am angry, and just breathe out. And then it starts to dissipate. You might need to do that 15 times for it to actually work. And with practice, it will happen with just 2 breaths. I am frustrated. And then release it. Because that's the only way you can give consciousness to that, so that it then allows your body to do what it naturally does and process it.
So true. I love it. What's your favorite fruit, Joe?
It varies from time to time. Grapes, totally.
Oh, red grapes. Or green.
Don't care.
You don't care.
Grapes that are big, juicy, and crispy to the bite.
Yeah, the consistency is important in fruit, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. You've got to have that kind of like you're tearing the forbidden fruit.
Yes.
I love, at the moment, I'm into the mandarins. It's mandarin season in Victoria. One of the things I don't like about Australia is, in England, I'm used to getting anything any time of year. Now,
you don't want to eat seasonally?
Well, no, actually. I get the benefit of eating seasonally, but that was breakfast.
Now I want to choose whatever you want.
Now I want to do something else. And so at the moment I am addicted to the the mandarins that have got the loose skin.
I love that.
But they're not shriveled, they're still juicy in themselves. So
mandarin juice is so good too.
Mandarin juice. And then I also have peaches. I love
so yum.
So grapes and peaches,
mandarins.
So next time when I come to visit you, that's my fruit salad.
Okay.
I see you guys seem to be doing,
you know that we love our fruit.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you could return to a moment in your life and re-experience it again, what moment would you return to witness?
Ooh. I'm going to do a tongue-in-cheek answer to that one.
I'm down for it.
The tongue-in-cheek answer is my birth.
Yeah, I love it.
because I'd like to hear the angels singing again.
And now he's on the floor. He's fallen over laughing at his own joke.
Yeah, absolutely.
What an amazing thing to experience if you could experience that again.
Yeah, I would like to revisit some of the meetings I've had with my daughter. So not many people know I actually have an estranged daughter.
Yeah.
And so I would like to revisit those.
Nice.
And probably my daughter, revisit some of the experiences I shared with her when she was a young kid.
Beautiful. Would you choose the forest or the ocean?
I'd like a forest over an ocean. Right next to, there's a cliff, you go down.
You and Eloise need to find a neighboring property. I think that was her answer as well.
Absolutely, yeah. People go, do I want to live in the bush or do I want to live next to the bay? I'm going, put those together.
Find a coastal town with lots of nature.
Or 5 minutes in either direction. I'm in between. Yeah.
It's like 15-20 minutes to the beach where we are, but we've got a forest on our property, so I think I can deal.
Well, in answer to your question, I'd like to live on your property.
Come visit, Joe. Come visit. What plant or flower are you working with the most at the moment? If you're willing to share.
I am willing to share. The plant thing is Sharon's baby. Yeah. So she's in our business, she's known for that. But I have a secret life with this.
I can imagine you do. And
so I have an affinity with honeysuckle.
Oh, wow.
I had a dream. And it was around about the time where we were putting together the Spirit Allies and Mythical Creatures course. And so there were, in my dream, there were these elvin fairy, like Lord of the Rings elvins, and they were riding 8-legged horses.
Wow.
And those 8-legged horses are called Schleppner. And so the famous Schleppner was Odin's horse is a Schleppner. It's an 8-legged horse. And so there were these elvins, there was like a whole horde of them riding a whole pack of these horses. And I was on a wall looking at them and they were below me. And then suddenly, for whatever reason, I'm in amongst the elvins and the horses and they're all flying past me and I'm in their way.
Oh my gosh.
And one of the elvins pushes me away and then shouts at me, honeysuckle.
Maybe that was your name.
I had no idea. And then around about the same time, I had commissioned a birch staff. And I chose this particular one because it had, in fact, I'll show it to you. It was twisted. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Can you see? And so it's twisted. And I was drawn to it for some strange reason. And the guy that made this for me said that there was a honeysuckle vine.
Wrapped around the thing to create this spiral effect in the staff. Yeah, so cool.
And so when I looked up the properties, birch is healing, has healing properties and protection properties, and so does honeysuckle.
There you go.
And so the secret ingredient with the cacao ceremony and the matcha is honeysuckle.
Oh, beautiful. What a nice combo. I think it just adds, like, it just creates this like poof, like perfect little balance, doesn't it?
It feels like an energetic protection bubble.
Like the trifecta.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing.
And now it's no longer a secret.
There are no secrets here. Do you have a favorite crystal?
I have lots of favorite crystals. You can see my wrist.
Yes.
This is a rose quartz. No, sorry, smoky quartz.
I was going to say, smoky.
Yeah, it's not rose. And my other favorite crystal is, I think it's called Amaldine Garnet.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I have heard of that.
So these were made by the same person.
They're wristbands.
I bought this one in the shop and then found the card and then sought the woman out because
And she made the other one for you.
yeah, she tuned in. I needed to connect more to the dragon energy and relate that to the ancestry, my ancestry.
Beautiful.
It's that. But this is my favorite crystal. It's called
skull.
It's not the skull. This one happens to be in the skull shape, but it's called intrinsionite.
Intrinsionite. I haven't heard that.
You can only get it from Canada, and I've imported it and I give it to the spirit weavers. It's 1 billion years old, and it connects you fully to divine grace.
Beautiful. Intrinsionite. Wow.
And so you saw that crystal on the staff.
Yeah.
It's also intrinsionite.
How perfect.
And I carry them on me all the time because it helps to just connect the energy to source consciousness.
Yeah. Love it. That almost like that 12D energy, hey?
Almost like that 12D energy, yeah.
If you were an animal, what would you be?
I am an animal, human.
A mammal, a reptile.
I have.
Fish.
It's funny you ask that, because I've got one of the things you do when you work with spirit animals is you can get to be them.
Mm-hmm.
And you can imagine when you get to the level that you're running courses like this, you kind of accumulate.
Have embodied a few.
and have embodied a few. And some of the ones I really love working with are cheetahs and dragons, obviously. But if we can
are we surprised?
Animals, And so some of my favorite, but I've got this rhino that has such a good energy. And
energy rhino.
It's just when I'm doing shamanic clearing in the spaces, it's the rhino energy it's really interesting to me. It just does something to help me, remind me of my own power and strength. And so I'd probably be a rhino or a hippopotamus or a giraffe or a buffalo or an albatross.
I'm surprised that we don't have Gemini in your chart somewhere.
Well, it's funny. With the somebody did an alternate chart for me, and you
had, because you have a lot of Gemini energy. I feel
I do have a lot of Gemini energy. She said your chart, all your planets are all in Gemini, and when I was out with Sharon seems to attract Geminis because she's a Gemini.
Because she is a Gemini, yeah.
And so there's a lot of Gemini energy.
Interesting. Are there any last words or summations you'd like to leave the listeners with before we let them know how they can get in touch with you? Oh, now you don't have words.
Now I don't have words, sorry. Well, I'm not, as you know, Kristin, I'm not one to speak a lot.
Just with me.
And I'm quite shy.
Yeah, you're very shy.
I don't know. Any last words other than sell myself? I tell you what, yes, there is last words. If you look at how this conversation's gone, it's pretty much what I'm into right now. There's a couple of things that are not there, but
it's the aliveness.
So we started with the aliveness, and do the thing that makes you feel nourished, and make sure it has color in it.
Yeah.
And we then spoke about nourishment with Qi Gong, being sovereign, tuning into Earth's frequencies. That's kind of all the things that I'm into right now. The things I really love is, and I've got this new mentor, because when you do this work, to think that you know something is your biggest stagnation. It's going to stop you. So even if you're at the top of your game, be open to the fact that you don't know everything, and so get yourself teachers, get yourself mentors. I think why don't we leave it at that?
I think that's brilliant advice.
And because of that, I am consciously trying to just be a better version of myself.
Totally.
And we need, and that means different things in different situations. And what it's meant for me recently is just to learn to show people my heart.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And it's hard. It's hard.
It is hard sometimes, isn't it?
Because being male, running different communities and holding a clinic, it's easy to go into this frame of reference where I just have to I have to show that I'm capable.
Yeah.
And I've learned that my growth is when I admit that I'm flawed.
Yeah.
I'm vulnerable.
Yeah.
I make mistakes, and not to others. When I start to admit that to myself, and then show that it's okay that people see that in me.
Totally. I think that is the essence of the humbleness of being human, isn't it?
Well, and that's been the key reason why I haven't been prominent on social media. It's just that
it's a hard space to show up in. Like, I've really not been strong in that space recently either.
Yeah, and it's I actually had to do trauma therapy on it because it's a really interesting wound. It's
constantly asking for authenticity in ways, but then also it's like, what is authentic? Because I'm only showing you this one little part of my life.
Right. And then exposing your that phrase, throwing pearls among swine. We used to have
I don't know that phrase.
we used to I think it's from the Bible. We used to have a teacher, Mr. Nash, in the philosophy school that used to say, never throw your pearls of wisdom amongst swine. And that was a effective way of basically saying, don't give people who aren't deserving of your energy the time and space.
Yeah.
Give them a little bit, and if they treat you with respect and treat that with respect, then you can give them some more.
Yeah.
Then you give them some more, then you give them some more.
Yeah.
And there's a wounding that we all have with social media where you want to do authenticity in an authentic way. Yeah. The tendency with social media is that it can promote inauthentic authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that really my pet peeve is that when people show up and the first thing you see on their website is their story. Mm-hmm. Their story can be summarized as, I got ill, I struggled a lot, and now I have credibility to do what I do because I've gone through that in my process, which is kind of true. Mm-hmm. But if you are somebody like me who's lived a bit, you don't want somebody that just basically vomits their process over in social media. You want somebody that has gone through that process, but has learned to contain their energy.
Yeah.
Has learned to be an example of the things they talk about. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you're less the discernment. If you're younger than 23, you're not going to be my business coach because you haven't had any business. Yeah. If you're younger than 30, you're not going to be my relationship coach because you haven't had enough relationships. And if you've only had year-long relationships, I'm not going to come to you for advice for my 15-year-long relationship, am I?
Yeah, I have people come to me for advice in relationship, and I'm like, okay, but I can give you this info, but actually I know nothing at the end of the day. I mean, I've been in a long-term relationship and it's going really well, but like, I also don't think I know anything in that way. I'm like, I'm a way off before giving any sort of advice in this space.
and that sets you up in a perfect position to be able to hold space for their actual issue.
Yeah, exactly. It's not making it about you. Yeah.
And you can then provide an answer to how their energy is coming across, and also help them organize the chaos that they're presenting.
Yeah.
And you're not trying to be something. And so I've shied away from social media because I've got all these ideas about what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm learning to work out, I realize this is now a social media driven economy.
Yeah.
And so the reason I agreed to this conversation is because my spirit team are telling me, you got to get out there, mate.
Yeah. I mean, it's communities. Communities are the currency of the future, and that could be online, but it also is offline as well. I think community offline is a really important thing, and I've been putting more focus in that for myself. Or actually, I've been putting focus in a different kind of community, like my podcast community, rather than just like followers on Instagram, kind of those communities that feel really more important for the future.
Yeah. I tend to think about, what am I passionate about right now? And right now, all the things I'm passionate about may be interesting to someone, But I'm also a private person. I don't want to share that. It's sacred to me, so I won't share that.
Yeah.
Then I think about, well, what does my business need? Because I'm not showing up socially for my business. And then I realize that I'm going through a cocooning stage and a remake, like everybody else. The energies of the last few years has basically, it's a bit like being in a place where there's a volcano. We were in Bali when the volcano erupted, and it felt like all the things that were hidden have come to the surface.
Yeah.
That's exactly the analogy of what's happened over the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that is hidden has now come through the surface.
Yeah.
So we're now in an opportunity to reevaluate how we show up in this new opportunity. And this new opportunity is a goodbye to the old and a opportunity to co-create what we want going forward.
Totally.
And so most of us are cocooning to work out, well, who am I in this period? And you can't answer that in 1 month,
yeah,
in 2 months. And for some people, and certainly me, it's going to take a year or two to actually come to that, to land in that place where you say, this is now where I stand.
Patience,
and this is what I stand for.
Provides the tangible backing as well, sometimes.
Patience allows you to come back to your body, to actually to hear what it is that you now believe, to feel what it is that you now need to feel. And so you will see me on social media, and at that stage I'll have refound what I'm now passionate about in this version of me in this time.
Yeah. And you'll be ready to share it.
Yeah. And it'll be done in cool, colorful ways.
I love it. If someone wants to get in touch with you or work with you or find out more about your programs or your ceremonies and your courses, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, that's very generous of you to offer that. So the clinic site is Embodied Soul. That's www.embodiedsoul.com.au.
Yeah.
And the Shamanic School and the Qi Gong is shamanicenergytraining.com.au.
And I'll put it all in the show notes as well.
Oh, thank you.
Too easy. Well, thank you for such a fun, interesting chat, Joe. I've had so much fun.
Thank you. So have I. We should do this again. Every 6 months.
Yes.
And don't necessarily record it.
No, yeah, we need to catch up more anyway. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been very, I feel honored that you're willing to come and share your wisdom in this platform.
Well, you're such a lovely person, and I love, like I said earlier on offline, I've been listening to your style and your other interviews, and it's such a lovely, uplifting, nice feeling. Even your intro puts a smile.
You almost changed my intro recently, and then I went back and listened to it. I was like, no, I like this. And ever since I did that, I've had 3 people say, I love your intro.
Yeah, it's just you can't not be wanting to hear more. It's kind of so uplifting. Aww. And that's how I feel about you. It's like, those people that when you think about them, you go, oh, I'm glad I know that person.
Thanks, Joe. Well, so, I'm glad I know you. Cheers to that.
Let's see what sort of mother she turns into.
Oh, yes, let's see. That's my biggest fear at the moment. So I appreciate that. But that's a conversation for offline.
Well, that's another conversation, yeah. Well, give my love to Alex, and when your mum comes up, give her a big hug.
I will.